Another thing I find very useful is the quick insert search widget, which makes it so that you can do this key combination. By default, it's set to Control Space. And from here, you can type in pretty much anything and then find what you're looking for and drag it onto the character, and it will automatically add it. So I just made a fighter. Now I'm adding the human ancestry, and you can easily find feats here like double slice, and I can just drag it onto the feats section of the character sheet. Ronald the Rules Lawyer. Recently, I did a video on what I called the best tool for Pathfinder, and I covered Archives of Nethys. And to be honest, I think the more accurate title would have been the best free tool for Pathfinder that is useful to everyone who plays Pathfinder, but that's clearly not as sexy a title. For me, I would say the most useful tool has been Foundry Virtual Tabletop, and the Pathfinder subreddit would tend to agree. This is a poll asking them, which virtual tabletop do you use? And a large majority of them said Foundry VTT. I wouldn't call it the best tool for everybody because people have different needs. Many people want to play in person, or people want a lighter virtual tabletop, something like Albert Rodeo. But for most Pathfinder players who use a virtual tabletop and also don't mind paying what I think is a small fee of $50 one time that only the GM has to pay for Foundry, Foundry is used by the vast majority of Pathfinder players. And Foundry, like Archives of Nethys, just really smooths the play experience if you are playing online. And it definitely far outshines the D&D 5e experience in Foundry or other virtual tabletops by virtue of the fact that Pathfinder has its rules out for free. And so all of the character options and rules are available for Foundry to automate. In the first year of my channel, I did 2 videos on Foundry Virtual Tabletop. One was an edited video covering my mods at the time in late 2021. And at the start of 2022, I did a full walkthrough tutorial with people, including Swingwhipper, guiding them through creating their own Foundry world as game masters. But people who hear those dates are probably laughing because Foundry is constantly, shall we say, improving. They're constantly updating the base Foundry and the Pathfinder implementation within Foundry and the hundreds of mods that are available out there for Pathfinder and other games in Foundry. A lot has changed in 2.5 years, hence this video. Now, the video on my modules, about half of those mods I don't use anymore, either because they're not supported anymore or their functionality has been absorbed in the base Pathfinder 2e module on Foundry. But this series of videos is intended to replace this. My walkthrough, on the other hand, walking game masters through setting up their own world, explaining how Foundry overall works, how modules work, that is still useful, I think. Very useful, actually, because I'm walking people through it. I just think it's a great way to learn. Before I go any further, I am Ronald the Rules Lawyer. I'm a lawyer who runs tabletop role-playing games. My preferred system is Pathfinder 2e. Support my Patreon. I don't make money as a lawyer. For more info on that, look at the video whose thumbnail is on the screen. Supporting my Patreon gives you early access to most of my videos and exclusive content. This video will be in 3 parts. Part 1 covers the basics of running Pathfinder in Foundry. Part 2 will focus on some powerful modules for running Pathfinder that some will find essential. And Part 3 is about the bling, about making your Foundry experience sexy-er. I'm not going to talk about hosting your Foundry game, which can either be done locally on your computer or in the cloud. I do cloud hosting so that my players can log in and work on their characters while I'm not hosting. The Foundry website shows 3 companies that do cloud hosting that they partner with. Also, because this video is bound to become outdated at some point, I want to point you also to the great Discord communities where you can get your questions answered. They're very active and the people are very friendly and helpful. I'll have links to them in the description, but there's the Foundry VTT Discord server and the Pathfinder on Foundry VTT Discord server. Okay, first I'll cover some things basic to Foundry that are helpful to Pathfinder GMs. For future reference, I am recording this on July 5th, 2024, using version 12 of Foundry Virtual Tabletop, build 328, using Pathfinder 2nd Edition 6.0.4. First, we're going to configure settings. There's this picture of a gear in the upper right corner. So click that, then click Configure Settings. And here we have all of the settings core to Foundry. And then if you have Pathfinder 2nd Edition, there are additional settings for that, and then settings for all of the modules that you have installed. So in the core Foundry settings, the first thing I recommend to everybody is, this is going to be a rant, check left click to release objects. For some reason this gets unchecked periodically with a major update. I don't know why. Most people are used to deselecting what they've selected by clicking somewhere else, and it doesn't do that by default, and it's annoying. Also, characters are represented by tokens on any given map, and you can change a token's settings manually by right-clicking it and clicking the gear that shows up. However, you can create default settings for all tokens here in the core settings by clicking Configure Default Token Settings. So this is very useful if you're like me and like to have all names visible to everybody when they hover over them, and to have resource bars like the creature's hit points hidden to players, unless they own the token. So I have it set to say always for owner. There is a setting here that seems like it would add a random adjective at the front of a monster's name, which isn't working for me today, sadly. Hopefully it will work in the future. Maybe it has something to do with one of my mods, but I'm not sure why. There's another way to add random adjectives, which I'll get to in part 2. This is to have adjectives like proud kobold or questioning kobold. Next thing I'll point to here in the core settings is that you can configure the combats tracker, aka the initiative tracker. You can customize it to your liking. You can also set it so that an epic sound happens whenever combat starts. You can also create a custom playlist of background music under playlists and have the encounter tracker start playing that whenever combat starts and stop whenever combat ends. Also, I found sometimes running for my players, if they have a slow computer or have a very large map that we're on, that sometimes their computer slows down. So here under the core settings, there are ways for them to lower the performance and to lower the frame rate. They can also disable the game canvas altogether. There are many other settings here that I encourage you to look at if you're so inclined. I'm not going into everything because, again, these are evolving. I'm just hitting the highlights. Next, we go to Pathfinder 2nd Edition settings. These are the settings for the implementation of Pathfinder in Foundry, called a system in Foundry. It's like a module that itself gets frequently updated. Our first button here is to manage automation. And here we have some settings that I think most GMs should turn on. Rules-based vision should implement low light vision and dark vision for your characters. Immunities, weaknesses, and resistances automatically adds or subtracts from damage when you apply damage to an actor. I also like to have effects auto-expire so that I get a notification on the condition itself when something like Raise Shield expires on a character, for example. It also is supposed to disable the effect. The checkbox for removing expired effects removes the condition entirely. I do not check that myself. Your mileage may vary. I just don't want to lose track of something, and sometimes I backtrack in initiative. Flanking detection you'll want on. You may want to check encumbrance so that it applies the encumbered condition to someone who's carrying too much stuff. Lootable NPCs you may or may not want to have. If it's checked, it allows the players to, after they defeat a monster or non-player character, open up their token and get their stuff. Next is a set of choices to limit metagame information, information that gives the players more info than their characters necessarily would know. By default, it shows the check outcomes which of the 4 degrees of success something has. You can have it give more information, like the target AC, for example. I like to have shared party vision on so that everyone can see from every character's eyeballs. And you can have a monster whose name is not visible to the players also have their name invisible in the encounter tracker. I don't check this because I like to give them fake names, and I have another way to hide monsters if I want to. Basically, it's possible to make their token invisible, so that hides it in the encounter tracker. That's one thing. There's other ways that I'll get to. Next are the variant rules. Here you're going to find the popular free archetype variant. You'll find some other popular variant rules, including gradual ability boosts and proficiency without level. Now, if you're looking for Ancestry Paragon or dual classing, those live in a module that I'll get to in part 2. You'll find here other settings that are specific to the Pathfinder implementation. Here you can toggle whether you double the number of dice or just double the damage from dice on a critical hit. I like to have double the dice. Other settings incorporate Pathfinder's optional critical hit and fumble cards if you want a little more randomness in your game. When you open up a character sheet in Pathfinder, it looks like this. The basic statistics are on the left, and there are many, I call them tabs, that you can click up here at the top. Many things can be rolled directly from the character sheet, like a perception check. If you're wondering about the virtual dice and that sound effect, watch part 3 of this series. Just really quickly, this button here is for actions. So all of your weapon strikes are here, and all of the special actions you can get from feats. And now I'm going to demonstrate a simple weapon strike in Foundry. First, I target the foe by hovering over it and pressing T for target, and then I click this longsword strike from his character sheet. And it resolves and it compares the roll to the enemy armor class. Then I can click this damage button. Under the result, there is this button to apply the damage. So I want to select the enemy first and then click this button, and it applies it to their health. Your inventory is here. You can also shop for items from the inventory by clicking the magnifying glass. You can look for an item, and if you click this little stack of coins, it will add the item to your inventory and subtract the price from your currency. After inventory, we have spells. I'm gonna pull up our wizard. Here we have our wizard's prepared spells, and they can also open up their spell book with this button. As with most things in the character sheet, you can send these things to chat and do the actions within. Next, there's a crafting button for you to store the formulas you have if you craft items. Alchemists and other characters who can craft a set number of items every morning for that day. You can set it to quickly create items in your inventory based on what you want to craft that day, with a click of the button. Voila! After crafting, we have proficiencies, where you'll find all of your skills and attacks and defenses, and your class DC. And feats is where we find, obviously, feats, but also your class features as well. A relatively recent thing they added is really cool. They created a party folder here under actors. You just add the actors who are the members of your party, and now you can click and drag this entire red bar onto the map, and it creates this dynamic token that can suck everybody into it and also spit everybody out. You can quickly add the party to a new map with this. But even more, there's this handy party sheet right here that can give a summary of the basics of your party. You can also change the number of hero points characters have here. You can get an overview of the party's skills, which shows you the best bonus the party has in each skill, and when you hover over it, it gives you a breakdown of each character's bonus. These are also color-coded depending on whether you're trained, expert, master, or legendary. There's a recall knowledge button for the magical tradition skills and for the lores. Also within the party sheet is an exploration tab. Players would need to go under the actions part of their character sheet and populate the exploration tab with exploration activities for this to work. But yes, you can make it so that people declare within Foundry what their exploration activity is. This tab within the party sheet also gives your party's travel speed and perception bonuses. You can prompt the party to do a specific roll from here, or make the entire party rest for the night. What I use most is this last tab, however. It's the party stash. This is a place where the GM or the players can just throw everything in so that the players have a common place where they can see everything that they have and can drag items to and from their characters. I also want to show one thing that is very useful in Pathfinder games. A lot of spells and other effects create an effect within chat. Here is the Bard's Courageous Anthem cantrip, formerly called Inspire Courage, and it has a special coloring. Here it's red. Effects like this you can just drag directly onto a character token, and it will add that to their character and adjust their stats accordingly. Commonly used effects people may want to put in their hotkey bar at the bottom of the screen. You just drag the effect there, and they can toggle it with a simple keystroke. Now there's a more efficient way to implement effects that affect a lot of party members at once, like Courageous Anthem. I am going to get to that in part 2. But yes, rectangles are your friend. I am making this scene very dark so that you see that when our cleric casts the light cantrip, there is a spell effect for light, which can be dragged onto Kyra, and it illuminates the map. It becomes like any other effect on the token. When you click the token, it appears in the upper right corner, and you can right-click it to eliminate it. I also want to point out that you can make your own simple macros here in the hotkey bar. You just left-click an empty space, and this window pops up, and you can create a chat macro by default. So you can type in commands that would work if you were to type them directly in the chat window. So let's say your character has a special action or combination of actions that does a specific damage formula that doesn't come up often, but comes up often enough that it's annoying to have to deal with it. You can just type in a dice formula here, like 2d8 plus 1d6 plus 9. Save the macro, and now it's available as a quick hotkey that you can just type on your keyboard, and it automatically rolls it. You'll also find with experimentation that there's just many things you can drag onto this hotkey bar so that you can quickly access it. Like our wizard may want to cast Electric Arc many times. He just drags it from a spell part of his character sheet onto the hotkey bar, and now he could just press the number 7 to put it into chat. You could have many more buttons than 10 as well. Here on the right, you can scroll up and down so that you can have up to 50 different automated buttons. All right, now we're going to get on to the Pathfinder modules. I'm going to go over the basic modules that I recommend for people in their Pathfinder games. There's a few I'm setting aside for part 2, which are more complex, that I'm going to do more of a deeper dive into. Also, we'll have a little scenario here to show these modules in play, where our party is coming upon a ghost town. Everyone here died, and I'm going to drag the party onto the map using the nifty feature. They all appear, and they encounter a green dragon that attacks them. Now, this is a level 8 creature. It's kind of a ridiculous thing to throw at a low-level party, but I made sure our party was level 5. So the first module that I love for Pathfinder is Token HUD. HUD stands for Heads Up Display. You're going to want to install Token HUD Core, which is the basic engine, and then Token HUD Pathfinder 2e adds the things specific to Pathfinder. Basically, when you click a token, this row of buttons appears on the screen that you can also reposition by unlocking this lock on the right so that you can click and drag it around. And under strikes, we see his longsword strikes, and this shows the 3 different attack bonuses that correspond to the multiple attack penalty. He can also sheath, drop, and draw weapons from this token action HUD, and do other things with items such as raise a shield. There are toggles that he has that he can turn on and off that correspond to different feats that he has that will affect his attack bonuses and his damage. He just does a single click and it resolves. Under actions, we see basically the special actions that he can do from his feats. Under inventory, we see he can access his consumable items and use them from here. He clicks Healing Potion and there is a Use button, and when I click it, it will subtract it from his inventory and roll the amount of hit points. Let's switch to our wizard. We see that there is a button for his spells. He can cast all of his spells from here. Under attributes, we can adjust his hero points and also roll initiative using either his perception or one of his many skills. We have a regular perception check, and this is where we find his saving throws. Be warned, however, that if you just want to roll a straight skill check, do not go here, go under skills. It's an easy mistake to make that I do all the time because of all of the skills being listed under initiative. But here under skills, they're all color-coded handily, corresponding to whether he's trained or master or expert in something. Here under effects, we find all of the common conditions that can be added or subtracted easily. And under utility, we have some handy buttons, including a button to treat wounds or to rest for the night. Another mod I like is Dice Tray, which creates this row of dice buttons at the bottom. All the players see this as well, and it's very easy for them to add dice, add a modifier, and make a roll, like so. And if they want to roll 2d20 and use the higher roll, there is this fortune button that they can toggle as well, and there is a misfortune for the opposite. Now let's go through a list of modules that help in building your character. If you have players that use the Path Builder app to build their character, they can import it easily into Foundry. The mod is called Path Muncher. When you create a new character, you can, at the top, click the Path Muncher button and just type in the Path Builder ID number and it will fill in the character sheet. You're going to want to check over everything though. There's bound to be an issue here or there. But I've generally found it to be 98% accurate. Another thing I find very useful is the Quick Insert Search widget, which makes it so that you can do this key combination. By default, it's set to Control Space. And from here, you can type in pretty much anything and then find what you're looking for and drag it onto the character, and it will automatically add it. So I just made a fighter. Now I'm adding the human ancestry, and you can easily find feats here like double slice, and I can just drag it onto the feats section of the character sheet. If you want to have animal companions, construct companions, or eidolons, you're going to want to install the PF2E Companion Compendia module. Once you do, it will add this compendium pack that has a bunch of compendia with feats and features that you can add to your new friends. You just create a new actor and make it a player character. So I'm going to make a cat animal companion right now. I do Control Space, type in cat, which is an animal companion ancestry, drag it onto my character sheet. And it's kind of as simple as that. I now have a cat with the correct skills and statistics and special abilities. By the way, make sure that when you create a new party friend, that they don't start off hostile to the party, which this red circle means. You can change that under the character sheet and going under Configure. And here you can align them with the party. Another module that's useful is PF2E Staves. It automates creating a spell entry in the Spells tab of your character sheet that corresponds to a staff that you add to your inventory. So right now I will add a Staff of Healing to the Cleric, and when I drag it into her inventory, it automatically creates the Staff of Healing with the corresponding spells inside it and it tracks the number of charges. Now, how do you make your own tokens in Foundry? Well, you want to use the Tokenizer module. It lets you easily create a token. You just click your portrait in your character sheet. Your avatar is on the left. Your token, when you drag yourself onto a map, is on the right. And you want to check Modify, and you can upload a file, and I will upload a picture of Megan. There she is. I will not do a deep dive into how to use this, but this is how I make her token really quickly if you want to follow. I click here. I use the avatar image, I put Megan behind the token, and I can zoom in. They've recently added the ability to make things stick out of the token borders by using masks in this interface, which I don't know how to do myself, but there's an explanatory video out there for that. I'll link to it in the description if I find it. So I click Apply, wait a few seconds, and then I'm going to make her level 5, and now I can add Megan to my party. I'll also mention that there are a couple of mods that help with certain classes. Thaumaturges may want to get PF2E Exploit Vulnerability for that special ability, and Psychics may want to get PF2E Psychic Amps to be able to amp your spells. Another mod I've installed is Elevation Ruler. I recommend going under its settings and checking Use Token Ruler. This gives you constant feedback when you drag a token of how far your token is moving, and it changes color when you go into your second and third stride. Also, if your character can fly, you can, while you're dragging, use the left and right brackets to go up and down, and it will change the elevation automatically. You're going to want to install PF2E Elevation Ruler also to give it extra functionality within Pathfinder, including the color changing when you stride more than one time. Next, if you're like me and like keyboard shortcuts, there is PF2E Keybind Menagerie. Once you install it, you automatically can make something off guard by pressing F and remove off guard from them. F stood for flat-footed before. It's still the key now. You can always change that key under settings, under configure controls, where you can change what makes them off guard using the search bar on the upper left. And there's many other things that can be automated. Keybind Menagerie adds 137. You can scroll through it and see that you can automate a lot of things here, like taking cover, adding and removing a lot of conditions like frightened, or increasing or decreasing its value. Other things you may want to automate are raise the shield, treat wounds, and many skill actions like grapple. By the way, there's also many other key bindings you'll find here. Under core key bindings, there are things that help you move around the interface. And they're all categorized. Many come from the modules. By the way, if you're wondering how to switch between these modes on the left, between token controls and measurement controls and lighting controls, then you'll want to install a module called Layer Hotkeys. Once it's installed, you just press Shift 1 through 8 and you can easily switch between the different layers. You can customize the hotkeys in the same place. You can also open the module's settings to create even more hotkeys within the interface. I love keyboard shortcuts, and I discovered while recording this that P brings up the party sheet. Next is PF2E Modifiers Matter. I am well known for an animation my friend Dumble Builds made for me that says, "Boom, every +1 matters." They definitely matter a lot in Pathfinder. Well, this constantly reminds you of that whenever modifiers cause one of the degrees of success to change. So I'm going to roll an attack from Valeros against this green dragon with make and flanking. Okay, here. Okay, this came up, and this was going to be the next module I was going to talk about, the PF2E Rules Lawyer mod, which works in tandem with Modifiers Matter. When a modifier matters, you get this little display that shows what made the difference. Here, it was the fact that the dragon was off guard, causing this hit to happen. It would have been a miss otherwise. It also is going to animate when it goes against the party as well. So now we have a goblin that will provide flanking to the dragon. Alright, so this is the negative version. It's a different picture and a different sound effect. I would recommend, meanwhile, under the settings for Modifiers Matter, to check this box so that it ignores the difference between crit failure and failure, which is only important in a small number of cases, like if you have a swashbuckler in your party. It's up to you. Also, another cool thing about the Rules Lawyer module is that they included a macro for Ronald's Rules of Aiding. I made a video about how I house rule the aid action. You just control space and type in Ronald's Aid, and it's a macro that you can put anywhere. The next module is called PopOut, which makes it easy to create a separate window of something within Foundry. So I'll show it in action. So let's say this is my monitor and I want to have my character sheet open all the time to the side. Well, there is this PopOut button that the module puts there. I click it and it creates a separate browser window that is what I made pop out. It can be any of these buttons up here. So let's say I want my chat window to be separate. First, I right click this little button up here. It makes it its own floatable thing within Foundry. And here I can click pop out to make it separate and to the side and always visible to me. Very useful if you have more than one monitor. Now here's another one, Health Estimate. I usually don't like my players seeing the health bar of a creature. I like them to just get a general estimate of how close they are to being defeated. What Health Estimate does is if the players are not able to see the dragon's health bar, like right now, they can still hover over it and see that right now it is unharmed. However, if I reduce its health down to, say, about 2/3, it is now injured. And you can customize these descriptions and also what the percentage thresholds are. Here are the defaults. And my last module for today is called Illandril's Token Tooltips. So if you want to be able to hover over a token and see their basic stats, which I as the GM really appreciate if I want to quickly see their armor class or their saving throws or their perception bonus or their speed, then you'll want this module. Under its settings for this module, you can customize what is shown. By default, the party can only see the tooltip if they hover over an ally and not over an enemy. If you want, you can instead make it visible to everybody, but configure specifically which statistics are visible to the players. So that's it for part 1. In part 2, I'm going to go over some specific powerful modules and go into their options. And in part 3, I'm going to go over making your Foundry more visually and orally appealing. So to conclude, in addition to the usual stuff about supporting my Patreon, I want to mention that on my Discord, I keep a list of my current modules for Foundry in the channel titled VTT Advice, and it will be a pinned comment there. And of course, it's also a great place to talk about Pathfinder 2e and other role-playing games and other gaming. And if you want to play Pathfinder 2e, we have a drop-in, drop-out organized play system called Endless Tale Tavern that you can join. So that's it. I have been Ronald the Rules Lawyer, and I'll see you next time.